Okay, Allison, you're good to go. Thank you for your patience.
Good evening, everyone. I'd like to call the San Antonio Parks and Recreation Board meeting to order. It is 5:34 p.m. Thank you all for being here this evening on WebEx. I'm sorry that we're not in person. We will resume in person very soon once we can all be there. And I'd like to begin. Ryan, do we have any comments or from citizens that need to be heard?
No, ma'am, we do not.
Okay. I will entertain a motion for the approval of the minutes from our meeting on January 24th.
So moved.
Thank you, Chuck.
Second from Eric Sandin.
Thank you, Eric. All those in favor say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Any opposed? Same sign. Right, that motion carried. The motion passes. Okay, we'll start off with our first agenda, action related to Department self-monitoring standards for recreation programming. Sarah, is it Sarah that was going to start this off? Or Lynn?
Yeah, I got it.
Okay, great.
Yes, Madam Chair. Thank you, Sarah. And real quick, so we have 3 items this evening. This is the first of 3 regarding our 2022 Summer Youth Program and self-monitoring standards. This is an annual item that we do bring forward to Parks Board in accordance with our regulatory guidelines. And Sarah Sharp, Parks and Recreation Manager, will be presenting this evening. Sarah, it's all yours.
Thanks, y'all. Good evening. Before I get started, I did want to introduce. We have a new person on this today. Is Naomi Arredondo. She's the assistant manager that's going to oversee the summer youth program. So this may be the last time you have to hear me present the self-monitoring. Naomi, I told her I got her this year. She can see how it goes. It's easy peasy. I told her y'all are a fun room and you know, aren't attack at all. So she's going to listen this year, and then she's going to get started on it next year. So yeah, let's roll into this. So you know, I know it's about self-monitoring, but we always want to update y'all on what we did with the summer youth program itself from the last year, what our plan is for this year, and then the self-monitoring standards. So if you look at the next slide, this is going to give you the just kind of the data from last year. So our 2021 summer youth program. I don't know if everyone remembers, or if they weren't even on last year. So in 2020, in COVID, you know, we had to run camp with just our full-time staff. So we only had 8 sites. We used all of just our community centers. The staff did a fantastic job, kept everyone as safe as possible. Last year, we were able to roll out the program with our partnering school sites. So we actually had 34 sites last year, which gave us 2,311 participants, you know, which is quite a few considering we're still like right in the midst of the pandemic. So last year we had 21 of our own city sites, and then we had 13 school sites. We definitely consulted with Metro Health throughout the program. We did all of our COVID-19 precautions, made sure everybody followed all of those. Participants enjoy a variety of different activities. So it's arts and crafts, so then they're going to go do a sport. They may do a fitness activity. They have the nature, the science, a lot of different active games. The program is offered for our youth ages 6 to 14 at our community centers, and then 6 to 12 at our school sites. The program does operate Monday through Friday from 7:30 to 5:30. So it's a full day of activities for the kids. We do celebrate the Juneteenth holiday, so we're off that day, as well as July 4th. And then there are some school sites that will close for the week of 4th of July because they don't have any staff in the building to actually celebrate that week. So we work around the school's schedules. And then something different that we did last year is we had the reduced fee for all participants. So usually we have a full fee and a reduced fee, but considering we're still in the middle of a pandemic, everyone was able to register at that reduced fee of $25 for that first child last year in 2021. So that was one of those things that we were able to do last year. So looking at the next slide, talks about the different partnering school districts. So in the past, we've had up to 7 different school districts that we partnered with. Usually we get about 20, sometimes up to 40 school sites. Like I said, the previous year we were unable to partner with the schools. They were but we weren't using temporary staff, and they were really working on how to keep kids engaged in school. Last year, we did get some partnering schools. So we partnered with Southwest, Harlandale, Northside, and Northeast to offer those school sites. San Antonio usually has a lot of schools. They did a whole intersession for the month of July last year, so we did not have any school sites in San Antonio last year in the school district. This year, though, we're looking at Southwest, Harlandale, Northside, San Antonio's back. Edgewood is on this year, and I just actually had a conversation with Northeast that they're still deciding how they want to move forward. So we do have the school sites back on board, which is really beneficial because that gives us that coverage throughout the city. So we were excited about getting them back on board this year. If we look at the next slide, it kind of talks about what we do a little bit. So this will show some of those things. So again, we have those age-appropriate activities. We break the kids up into age groups, 6 to 8, 9 to 10, 11 to 12, 13 and 14-year-olds. That way they're doing stuff that's, that they'll like in their age group. We have math and science enrichment. So we have instructors that are certified in math and science to go out and do like really fun activities to keep the kids' minds active. But, they don't always know that they're learning, so it's not worksheets. It's something really cool, like a fun science experiment. I think we do slime every year. I'm not sure if it's the parents' favorite when they take the slime home, but the kids sure love it. So, that's just one of those things that I think they look forward to, but again, it keeps their minds active. We have a great partnership with the San Antonio Public Library. We do the Mayor Summer Reading Program every year. So the kids read different books. They get certificates signed by the mayor. They actually get a free book this year to start the program. So that's really exciting. We do an art exploration. So the kids learn about a famous artist, and then they get to mimic that artist's works. They do something in the vein of that artist. My favorite, and I think I've probably shared this before, is the Michelangelo one, where they learn about the Sistine Chapel, and then they lay on their backs, and we tape the paper on the bottom of a desk, and then they're painting like they're doing the Sistine Chapel, just in a much miniature version. So that's a really great part of our program we do. Those are art instructors, again, that go out and do that. And then we offer 2 meal components in the summer youth program. So in the past, we've always applied for the grant, and we have provided the food. This year, we're going to partner with the food bank, and the food bank is going to get the summer food grant, and they will make sure that the kids get their hot lunch and a snack every day. The school sites can choose to feed if they want to, so we will have some school sites, San Antonio for one, they feed at their site. So at those sites, the kids get breakfast, and then they get lunch. So it's a little bit different. If we feed, it's lunch and snack. If the school district feeds, it's breakfast and lunch. But that is included in the program every day for the kids. And they'll do anything from hamburgers to spaghetti to carne asada. So it's a really, it's a big menu, and the kids seem to really enjoy the food. Okay, so looking at the next slide, we're talking about 2022 summer prep. I feel like we've been doing this for a while yet, and we still have a while to go. So, this is a year-round project of summer youth. It's you have a little bit of time to inventory, and then it's like hitting the ground running and let's go. So we're doing information sessions right now for parents. That gives them an opportunity to come in and qualify for that reduced fee, since we're going to have the 2 fee levels this year. So again, for the first child at the reduced fee, it's $25. The full fee for the first child is $260. So there is a difference between the two. Right around 80% of our parents are going to probably qualify. We're looking at the numbers for that reduced fee. But we're offering those sessions in the evenings and on Saturdays now for parents. That way when they're out of work, they can come and we'll get them all set for that reduced fee. Registration will begin on August 30th at 9 a.m. So we'll have registration available online and in person. So that information has gone out. And then we're going to continue to consult with Metro Health, watching numbers, like how can we be safe? One of the things that now has become best practice is those enhanced cleaning that we did. Now that we talk to staff, like we should have been doing this the whole time. Kids are constantly getting into things and touching everything, and we really found some really great ways of cleaning the different equipment they're touching or the tables. And when you go to Target and you see in the restroom and they have a little schedule of cleaning, I mean, we're just continuing that. That's something we started with COVID, but it's just making sure we're cleaning each room on the hour, looking at the equipment, wiping things down. It kind of helps keep staff less sick too. You always find out like you get the flu or you get a cold because the kids are constantly touching you or touching everything. So those are some of those things that we'll be continuing this year. And then the next one, just I always like to, the next slide just has some pictures. I always like to brag a little bit because I think our staff does a fantastic job. So before we get into the major business of the self-monitoring, it's showing like these are some kids that really had a great job. We have staff that are really engaged. We get a lot of parapros or teachers that work in the school districts, and they come through and share their expertise. We have great full-time staff and temporary staff that work year-round and are really engaged with the kids. So I saw some of these and I thought, yeah, these are some great pictures just to kind of brag a little bit about the summer that these kids had. So that was just that's a little self one for me. So just wanted to share that with y'all. And so now if you look at the next slide, we're talking about the self-monitoring standards. So as a municipality, we're exempt from child care licensing regulations. So that's why we're here. So we present with y'all, and then we'll get it to council. So these must be ordained each year by city council. They require that we keep records. We have all those records. We keep the paper copies. We keep them electronically. The state reserves the right to visit sites. So we'll have all the records. They can inspect those. They can check out our sites to make sure we're staying in compliance. And then this applies to our out-of-school camps too. So we just got out of doing spring break camp. So during spring break camp, we went out and monitored every single site. The area supervisors go out. They have their checklist. They go through everything at all the community centers with the staff. They inspect the outside, the playgrounds. And so that's something we do at all of our out-of-school camps, except for Thanksgiving, because the Thanksgiving camp is only Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday. So it's nearly impossible to hit all the 18 sites within those 3 days, but we do it for our spring break camp and our holiday camp. So the winter holiday camp, we'll go out there and make sure that we're in compliance with all of these regulations. And then we've been operating under the self-monitoring standards since 2003. And on the next slide, I'll talk about a little bit about what some of those standards include. So those are those minimum staffing ratios. We make sure we stay within those. There's minimum staffing qualifications. So when we're hiring folks, which if you know anyone that wants a job, send them our way. We are definitely now hiring. We are looking at 34 sites. So that's, you know, anywhere from, or actually I think we're gonna be a little bit above that. So we're looking at anywhere like about 4,000, 4,500 kids right now. So we definitely need staff. So if y'all have any folks that want to come and work for us, send them my way and we will hook them up. We do check their qualifications. So it's like we have age limits. We have, depending on what level that they apply for, there's the different qualifications. We can walk folks through that. Looking at the minimum facility health and safety standards, and then the mechanisms for monitoring and enforcement. So like I said, we conduct the comprehensive visits at all the sites, make sure that all the guidelines are being met. We make sure that when staff are monitoring a site, it's not a site they directly oversee. So everyone swaps sites just to make sure it's like new eyes on it, that it's a new staff member that's overlooking that site and making sure that, you know, they're in compliance. If something isn't in compliance, we do an action plan. We document anything that needs to be done, and then we will follow up and make sure that has been taken care of. And then we have copies of the self-monitoring standards that are available for parents if they inquire on that. That way they can have all the information as to what we do as well. And then the last slide is just talks about the public input. So that's this process. And then we will go ahead and get this to City Council for the annual adoption. There were no changes to self-monitoring. We check that every year, so there were no changes this year. That's just a 2022, but yeah, there were no changes this year, so it's the same self-monitoring that we had last year. And that's it on my end. Any questions at all?
Can I jump in real quick?
Yeah.
I just wanted to be just to clarify it for those of you who might be new, but when Sarah talked about the reduced fee of 25, that's for the entire summer. So that's not a per week cost. That's an entire summer cost of the program and the meals and all of that. So, and I say that only because it is so reasonable. I didn't want anyone walking away thinking it was like a per week charge. That's a full summer program charge.
Do we have access to the sites already, or is that something available on the website?
We do have some on the website right now, the ones that had voted and approved. So for our community center sites, we know they're on the website. For these school sites, SASD still has to take their sites that they'd like to use to their board, but they don't see an issue with the ones that we have. They just don't have to publicize them yet. I do have a list of what our proposed sites are, and we can get that out to y'all. I can get that to Ryan. So we do have that, and it will also be listed on the website.
Sarah, can you repeat the registration date one more time?
It's April 30th at 9 a.m.
And there will be a flyer that usually comes up with registration, so we'll make sure that gets out to the board. There is an action item that does come with the self-monitoring standards. Since it does go to City Council for approval, we do ask for the board's endorsement of this. So I will defer over to Allison to take a motion and a formal action to approve the self-monitoring standards. And then that will then go forth with City Council. Right now it is proposed to go to City Council on April 21st.
Excuse me, Ryan. I'd like to share with Sarah that I am so excited about this summer program. I've visited several of the sites and the kids were so excited and so happy. You retire out of education, but you never leave it. And when going just out of curiosity, I was so excited to see how happy those kids were and how involved and engaged they were. And I want to thank you for bringing that to our community.
That's fantastic. We appreciate that. You know, it's like we always tell parents, one of the things when I used to run a site, it's like the parents would come in. I was like, leave them with me. I was like, they're going to have fun. They're going to be active. They're going to go home, eat dinner, and then they're going to go to bed. And they, you know, we would have parents come in the next morning. They bring me breakfast. Like, man, my kid was exhausted last night. They couldn't wait to come back this morning. I was like, you're very welcome.
Yes, yes. My at-risk kids are totally different in the summer program that they were during the fall and spring. It brought out a whole different kind of energy from them. And I think, like you said, the learning is presented in a different way. So it gets them more engaged and a little more excited about school, but it shows a different way of viewing things. And you all have done an outstanding job with how you all conduct those centers.
Thank
Melinda,
you.
we held our senior leadership meeting this morning, and Melinda shared a story with an interview that she did last week. So I may defer back over to Melinda real quick for Reader's Digest of that, but just kind of goes to show the impact of the program. Melinda?
No, we were able to, good evening, everyone. Just wanted to share what we shared with our senior leadership. I got to participate on a panel interview last week, and one of the gentlemen that came into the interview was really looking to work with the city and with the Parks Department, because he shared that when he was growing up, he attended the summer youth program at Garza Community Center, and if it wasn't for the summer youth program, neither he nor his siblings would have had a meal to eat during the summer. So he wanted to really, it was so important to try to give back to the community because he saw the impact that the program had on him. And now as an adult, he was wanting to give back, so.
Great. Good story.
And the only thing I would add, it was powerful. He shared not only does he want to give back, but he has adult children now. I think one may be in school or, you know, in college, and one may have graduated, but how he used, I think, his upbringing and the impact that our program had to even influence, I think, how they carry forward to give back to the community. So it was really great example, and it was just touching to see the impact that we have, and for it to come full circle, you know, however many decades it's been, maybe, you know, 30 years, who knows, 40 years, it was really, you know, eye-opening. So great stuff, though, for sure.
I think Jeanette had her hand up for a little bit now.
Yes, I do. Thank you. Good to see you all. Sarah, first of all, congratulations on another successful summer of love, as we could call it. I appreciate all the statistics that you shared, but there were several that flew by me. So I had a couple of questions just so that I learn, because I think this is probably the second or third time that we've had this presentation. And you said something that really stuck out to me, and that was that you did not have any recommendations for changing anything to the self-monitoring standards. And so you also said something about since its inception, or like 2003 or something. And so I'm curious, when was the last time that there were any changes to the standards, and what were those changes? Just so that I can learn what we would be looking for in the event that there needed to be something changed.
Yeah, what we do is we actually pull up the state regulations every year. And so there wasn't anything last year or this year. The year before that, there was actually a change which we brought to y'all. I believe actually I presented that one. And they had made a slight change to the, if there is a gate, like in a playground, the gate needed to be unlocked. So like right now at a school site, or even at a community center, I guess, it really applied more to the school sites. You have to have the emergency doors so that folks can get in and out, which that makes sense, of course. And they had, I guess, because schools had been being utilized for the site, is if there's a gate that's on the playground, there you have to have that locked, because sometimes they would chain those. So in a case of an emergency, you need to be able to get the kids out. Like if, like say the building's on fire, right, and it's a small playground, and the gate is locked or chain locked, and we don't have a key, how are you gonna get the kids out of there? So that was the recommendation that we found in the self-monitoring standards. So we changed that in our form and made sure that now when we go out and do the visits at the sites, that the gates are all unlocked. That's part of the checklist now. So those are the things that we look at. We look at every single little, you know what I mean? What are the little ones, and are there a change? So that was the most recent change, and that was in 2020. Or actually, I'm sorry, that was in 2019, because 2020 was a little COVID-esque. So yeah, but we do. That's one of the things every year we look at. We pull those from the state, and we look to see what's applicable to us, and then anything that we need to do, we change. We'll put that in there and bring that to you.
Lynn, I'm sorry, I'm going to put Lynn on the spot. Is there anything you can remember from your time, just to give her another example?
No, other things that we've changed occasionally, like our job titles have changed. And because those are referenced in there, we've had to change that. When we, as a city, started going with the 10 digits, including the area code and phone numbers, we went back and adjusted all of the phone numbers in the standards. So we've made some, like what I call administrative changes over the years, but there haven't been a lot of changes in the state licensing that have impacted what we do as a program. And we do check in with them when we have questions. One of the things that we did do, probably been 3 or 4 years ago now, is we did add the camps into the programs that are monitored. So we hadn't done them previously. And in some conversations with the state, we decided that those should be monitored as well. So a few things like that.
Got it.
Does that help?
Yeah, it does. It totally does. And I appreciate it, because I get asked questions by people all the time, and sometimes it's helpful to have this context. I do want to say that I think, again, I've said this about lots of the park projects. I don't think enough people know about this. And I hope that, that you guys can find time on the park bench or some other way to share this, because this is one of those things that a lot of folks don't realize is happening. And you all are doing it. And you're not just doing it, you're doing it really well on top of everything else that you have to do. And so I just want to encourage, if it's Connie or someone else at the public affairs side of the house, if they could please continue to elevate this conversation and let everybody know.
Yeah, Connie does a great job for that. And then just the one thing I'd like to share is, this year our partnership with the food bank, I think, is going to be fantastic. A lot of those families are the folks that really need our services. And so they are already giving out all of our now hiring and then our information sessions, those sessions for the reduced fees. They're putting those in all the bags as folks are getting food at the different food drives. So I think that's going to be a super beneficial partnership to let the community that really needs our services, you know what I mean, what's going on. They're right down the road from our main office. I'm pointing because I'm here at Darner, but I think that's going to be one of those things that really lets folks, because you're right, not everybody knows, and $25 for the summer is one of those things that if somebody needs childcare, $260 even the full fee for the whole summer is very affordable. But with that $25 fee, I think that partnership with the food bank is really going to hopefully bring it to light to those that really need what we have to offer.
And then as well, we also work through each of the council offices so that make sure they get it out in their newsletters and through their channels. So the reach, you know, we fill up fairly quickly as well. So we're going to continue to try to elevate it. But that's another avenue that I think has worked well in the past. And we're hopeful that we're going to fill them all up, and our sites fluctuates year to year, and we usually seem to, and because we don't have as many this year as in prior years, I think we'll continue to see that fill up very quickly. Any other questions on the self-monitoring standards or feedback?
Okay. Well, with that, then I will entertain a motion to approve the self-monitoring standards for our recreation programming.
So moved.
Jeanette?
Chuck?
Thank you, Chuck. All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Thank you, everyone. Okay. We'll move on to a briefing regarding the Parks and Recreation Department's national accreditation efforts, which I'm very excited to hear about.
Yes, and thank you, Madam Chair. This next one, I will say I'm impressed by how succinct it is. And Lynn has been a stalwart in driving this process forward internally. There has been a lot of work by a lot of individuals, and she's been the keystone to it all, bringing everyone together. And so we're glad to be here again. It's not new content, but it is an update to a critical item. So Lynn, without further ado, I will yield the virtual floor to you, ma'am.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Lynn Kenton. I'm the administrator for the Parks and Recreation Department. You may recall, for those of you that were with us last year, that we did an update on some of the strategies within our department. And one of those was the standard of excellence. And we talked a little bit at that time about seeking our national accreditation through our national organization, the National Recreation and Park Association. So this is kind of a refresher to come back and give you a little bit of a status update. So if you want to go to the next slide. The next slide just kind of tells you, again, our national organization is the National Recreation and Park Association. They're our national professional organization. We also have a Texas affiliate of that, which is the TRAPS, which is our Texas Recreation and Park Society. So some of you may have heard or even been involved with either NRPA or TRAPS over the years, or been to conferences or virtual meetings. So CAPRA specifically is NRPA's Commission for Accreditation of Parks and Recreation Agencies. And so they are the only agency that provides any type of accreditation for Parks and Recreation agencies. If you want to go to the next slide, Brian. Basically, what happens with accreditation, some of you are probably familiar with other agencies, but it's a process that verifies a management system of best practices for quality assurance and improvement. So CAPRA, the process is us looking at what are some of our practices and procedures and how do they measure up with some of the best practices across the industry of parks and recreation. As I mentioned, CAPRA is the only agency that has an accreditation process, and it shows a valuable measure of the overall agency's quality of management, operation, and service to the community. This is an independent group that is looking at our practices and policies and what we're doing to say, yes, you all are demonstrating a high level of professionalism and you are using some of the best practices across the industry. So we have, to demonstrate that we meet 154 standards in 10 different areas. 36 of those standards are fundamentals that you absolutely have to have. So the remaining 118 are what they call non-fundamentals. We have to meet 90% of those in order to achieve accreditation. The 10 areas include kind of your agency authority, role, and responsibility. So how is your agency established? When you look at across the country, keep in mind that not all of the Parks and Recreation agencies are part of a municipality. You know, they may be part of a MUD district. Agencies are run differently across the country as well. So they're looking at, for us, that approving authority is obviously our city council and our city establishment. But we're also looking at, you know, what citizen boards, such as our Parks and Recreation Board, we're here tonight. You know, what citizen boards do you have involved in your organization? What is your mission, vision? What's the jurisdiction? What are some of the agency relationships that you have? So that's kind of all of that agency role and responsibility. The next category is planning. So in planning, how are you involved in both the community planning? So for us, it's SA Tomorrow, right? Our community comprehensive plan. How is Parks and Recreation involved in that? Also, how are we involved in other local planning efforts that go on across the community? In addition to that, you know, our system plan, do we have a system plan, which you all are familiar with, we do have a system plan, and how we're implementing that system plan. Another key component for the planning area is community involvement in planning. And so we talked a lot about some different ways that we involve the community in planning, most specifically the example of our bond process recently, where we had a lot of community meetings, the Community Bond Committee, and that input that we got from that committee. The third category is kind of organization and administration. So how are we organized within our department? Our administrative offices, kind of what are some of our internal communications? How do we communicate with the public to get our information out there? If the public's requesting information, how do we respond to that? How do we market and have community relations? What is some of the technology that we're using across the department? All those kind of organizational, administrative sort of functions. The next area is human resources. So that's going to be all of our like hiring and recruiting practices, our disciplinary and evaluation practices, that we do background checks on people, especially that work with sensitive populations such as youth and seniors, ethics codes, job descriptions, you know, that we have job descriptions, and then that we also have staff that are in those positions. We had to submit resumes to show that the incumbents, you know, that are in the positions meet those minimum requirements for those job descriptions so that we have well-qualified staff in our positions. The fifth area is fiscal policy. So looking at, you know, just general guiding principles for our accounting, looking at how we handle grants, donations, revenues, purchasing, that we have policies in place for purchasing, handling cash, securing cash collections. Those are the different types of things. Also that we have a budget that's been approved by an approving authority, and that what we're doing to monitor that budget, and that there's an independent audit of that budget, which of course, some of those are part of the larger City of San Antonio level for us, but we do have our department components of those various items. The sixth area is recreation programming. So they're looking for, you know, how are you planning your programs? Do you have goals and objectives for your programs? What's the variety of programming that you offer? Do you have some things that are self-led? Do you have other things that are leader-led? You know, kind of, are there things for a lot of the demographics across your community? Are there offerings? Is there a wide variety? Also looking at leisure trends, you know, do we have codes of conduct for participants? As well as what are we doing to evaluate our programs, and how do we know if things are successful, and what are some of the tools and training that we're using for those types of things. The seventh area is facility management. So we're looking at like acquisition policies, encroachment defense, operations and maintenance, some of our fleet management, land and lease records, also environmental sustainability and recycling programs. Those types of things are all in the land and use and management policies. The eighth section is public safety, law enforcement, and security. So it talks about, you know, where do we have our laws and codes? How is that enforced? Who has the authority to enforce those? We also look at public information on, you know, how does the public have information on our policies and procedures, our laws and codes? Additionally, they look at some specific situations, emergency planning, emergency action plans, some traffic control things, kind of common things that Parks and Recreation agencies across the country are faced with and have to help with assisting with. The ninth category is risk management. So we're looking at risk management policies, reporting accidents and incidents, what kind of staff training you have on safety, and those type of topics. Also analysis of what are some of the risks and things that you're looking at from both a monetary and what do you need to be training on perspective. And the final category is evaluation, assessment, and research. And so that's looking at how are we evaluating our department across the department, so programs, facilities, how are we conducting that evaluation? Are we looking at outcomes assessment? Are we looking at performance measures? What are the level of service standards that we have? Are we conducting needs assessment? And then are we participating in various research? What are we involved in as a department? And so, as I mentioned, those are what they consider are the best practices kind of across the industry. And so we're demonstrating how we meet all of those best practices. So if you want to go to the next slide, Ryan. We had an application that was originally submitted in March of 2021, which is when we kicked off our accreditation process. We then completed over the past year what we call a self-assessment, and that was just submitted about a week ago. And that's where we basically look at ourselves and we provide evidence of how we meet each of the standards. There's kind of a narrative description, and then there's any accompanying documentation, whether it be the actual policy or procedures, whether it be minutes from a meeting like this to demonstrate a meeting has happened. So whatever the various evidence of compliance is, that's what we provided. There'll be a review team that is reviewing that information over the next 8 to 10 weeks, and then they will conduct a virtual visit. Because of COVID this year, they made a decision again this year to do all virtual visits. Prior to COVID, they had actually a team that would come and visit the site and meet with your staff, see some of the things in practice. Obviously, they had to transition to a virtual format. And when they were making decisions about calendaring things back in December and January, COVID was still looking a little on edge with the pandemic, so they made the decision to do virtual visits. So we will have a virtual visit, which will be the week of May the 30th through June 3rd. That is Memorial Day week, so it'll be that Tuesday through Friday. And then accreditation awarded, cross your fingers. If everything goes well, we do have an opportunity to, provide some additional information and answer questions and that type of thing. But if all goes well, we will be accredited in September at the annual conference, which will be in Phoenix this year. And then once the original accreditation is complete, then we will have some annual reporting to do each year. And then we will reaccredit every 5 years. So we go through the full process again every 5 years to demonstrate that we meet all of the different standards. And that's kind of where we're at. So we've just submitted our self-assessment and we're preparing for our virtual visit. Does anybody have any questions? I know that was a lot really fast, sorry.
I wanted to know, because I imagined that there was it took some time to get to this point. Did you find any of the standards difficult to reach, and I also want to know what we really excelled in, like if there was a difference in some of the standards, if something came in really high and then something we were kind of lacking, so we had to improve. How did that fall?
So, there were a few things, mostly related to training. I want to say, like emergency action plan training. We haven't done a lot of that during COVID just because we haven't, brought a lot of people together. People aren't working in the office anymore. So there were a few things like that we've done still some active shooter training virtually. We've done some different types of training, but it's been a little bit different environment with the pandemic. So there's a few things like that I feel like we might have a little bit of vulnerability on. We feel like we did definitely meet all of the fundamental standards for sure. And they range, right? So part of it is like, one of them is like you have to have an ethics code. Clearly with the city of San Antonio, we have an ethics code. It's well established. We train everybody on it. We have financial disclosure for that. So like clearly we have that very well established. I think some of our strengths for me personally, and Homer, you read through some of the fundamentals and have seen some things, so you may have some things to add to this, but I think we do a really good job of community engagement in a lot of different ways. And so I think, I think also our staff's local involvement in the planning function is really, we have staff that represent a lot of different committees and agencies and planning with different partners out in the community, whether it's programming or whether it's facilities. We do a lot of that. I think we also do a good job of evaluating things. We have lots of different measures that we use for evaluating programs, whether it's surveys, whether it's feedback cards, whether like we use social media. We look at those analytics to determine if our marketing is successful. And so we look at a lot of different things. We have EPEs, obviously, to evaluate our employees and their performance each year, how those are tied back to our goals. So I feel like that's really a strength for us. I mean, there's always areas of improvement, and I feel like, we're constantly getting that and looking for improvement and using some of that feedback for improvement. And so I think that's a strength for us. I've heard that a lot of it depends on who your review committee is, right, as far as some things go. So it's not, I don't know all of what other cities, I mean, obviously I looked at some examples and got some things from other cities. So I know to some degree what everybody put on things, but I don't know what, across the board, everybody put on every single one. I do feel like, we have some good, solid evidence that we do meet the standards. There are some things that are citywide versus department, but we saw that in other cities. So like Houston and Dallas are both accredited, and they used some of their citywide policies and procedures, such as their administrative directives or their purchasing policies, to meet those criteria. So there are some things like that. There were some policies that we updated and dusted off and generated and got some staff involved in writing. So we updated some things, and we'll continue to work on that. And that's part of our overall strategy with the standards of excellence, is to make sure that we have some standard operating procedures and things documented well, so that when staff do leave, we have direction for everybody. It's clear. It's not, I heard from so-and-so and I heard from so-and-so. So we're trying to make sure that we've got some standards across that. Does that answer your question?
Yes, that and more. No, thank you for sharing.
Okay. Homer, did you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, I think, being a large enterprise, there was a lot of kind of infrastructure, if you will, from things that we were able to lean on, similar to Dallas and Houston. But one of the things that I noticed, and I would, say it was a strength. I mean, so, one of the things I think with Lynn leading the effort, I mean, clearly it's a benefit. She's been in the department a long time. She is a park professional through and through. And because she's had to help in her early days, right, before we had the structure we had now, think about our summer programming, having to stand all of that up, both in the centers and in our outdoor spaces at our pools. And so it created a lot of that interaction with our operational side of the house. And so it was, I think, a great fit to have her lead the effort and then just tap into all of that institutional knowledge. We talked in our, I think, on an interview panel last week, some of the tenured staff that we have. And with tenured staff, there's a lot of know-how. And so when we were going through this, there were things where I think we kind of fed off each other, and we remembered and realized, oh, we have a policy on, say, for example, I think we have policies and protocols on things that I'm not sure other large agencies do. And I, Lynn's smiling, but I think there were several examples of where we came across that, and that was kind of cool to see. An example of that would be like a water fountain management policy, and I think in the environment that we've been in, when you see stories come out, and we've all heard where, splash pads, for example, are maybe not the safest environment, and kids are getting sick, and but we've seen it in other municipalities. But here, we're try to stay ahead of the curve and look at where these things happen. What are things that we can put in place to help prevent that from the news story being about San Antonio? So we've had that evolution, I think, of our park system. And so when we stop to think and realize all the things that we do have documented, it's quite extensive. And there are things that, again, I didn't know at the time. It was really with the purpose of this in mind, but we're going to take credit for it. And those are some of the things that we've uploaded into our application. And the other observation that I would provide, we were assigned a mentor, and I don't think there was maybe but once or twice where Lynn had to reach out. And it's not because, we know everything, but looking back at how do we fill the gap and how do we meet this need, a lot of it was already there. So, we're very hopeful. I think it was a great experience, and we're going to continue to march on. And with our virtual site visit here that week of Memorial Day, and so we're excited, but we're glad to be at the point where we're at. And again, I really want to highlight the work isn't done. Lynn and the team did a lot to document it. I worked with her very closely to look at all of this, but now the training begins. We don't just kick back, right? And that was the discussion of our senior leadership team meeting this morning. It's the next phase of the accreditation process that we're entering into, and that's to get everybody trained on a lot of stuff they already know. These are just now official documents and SOPs and policies that we have in place.
Thank you, Homer. I hope that one day we could be a mentor for some other city. I'm sure that we could.
Yeah, agree. Me too.
Yeah, and when we do, I know it will happen, when we do receive this accreditation, I hope that something could be presented at City Council to announce and make that clear to everyone that that this achievement that your department has made. So I hope that can be something that can take place, either in the city manager's report or something. That would be really wonderful.
For sure. That is our plan. We're going to put it on blast when we get to that point, and make sure, of course, city manager's office is aware, but all of council and the community. And so, yeah, we're going to work really hard to do that. So thank you for the support.
Any other questions or comments?
Go ahead.
Anyone else? Did you have something to add, Lynn?
I was just going to say, keep your fingers crossed and your candles lit for me.
We certainly will. I don't think y'all really need it, but I will. Okay. Well, moving right along, we definitely want to hear this briefing regarding the upcoming work related to the bond project at Brackenridge Park. I know you guys had a meeting last week. I was unable to attend, so I hope that you can provide us some updates.
Yes, absolutely. So Bill Pinnell is project manager on the park side. His counterpart is Jamal Moreno on the public works side. We did have this as a briefing item at our last meeting, and but clearly we're in a different place now. There's been some changes. The presentation we have this evening is the one that was presented at last week's meeting. And then of course, we'll include an update here at the end, but there's still more work to go. But this is the latest and greatest on where we're at right now as it relates to the 2017 bond project at Brackenridge Park. Bill, the floor is yours.
All right. Yes, Bill Pinnell, assistant manager with the department. I'm going to run you through the presentation that we did last Tuesday. We're going to kind of run through it kind of quick because it's a lot of slides. So definitely, if you got questions at the end, we'll take those on. But we wanted to show you what the public got to see, and hopefully I can do as well as our presenters did that night. So on to the next slide, please. So we showed them the talks about the agenda with the introduction, talk about resource documents, the scope of the project considerations, and interactive workshop. That was the layout for that meeting and how that occurred. A great opportunity to kind of step back, start all over, and re-engage. Okay, next. So we did tell them we were going to have 3 meetings. We did add to that. So we are going to do a 4th as well. And so this is just a general layout of items that we're going to cover through these times, understanding that the next 2 can change a little bit based on information that we do get out and what people feel comfortable with. So we will have another 3 meetings to talk with the public. Next, go into our introduction. So we did talk about, so we want to inform, and we want to give them information about the importance and why the project is important in that northern part of the park. We want to review about the guiding documents and the regulatory requirements that we have to adhere to, and that do dictate some of the things we do. Obviously, we want to be able to communicate, talk about those issues, some of the constraints, and then most of all, we want to listen. We want to get the community to give us feedback, talk about the issues, talk about the concerns that they have, and see how we can work those things together. We wanted to share, have experts there with knowledge regarding the information that we could interact one-on-one and be able to get those comments. And then, of course, we will be responding to the feedback that we get and giving them more information to answer those questions that they have. Next, so resource documents. So some of the guiding documents and regulatory requirements, we have the 2017 Breckenridge Park Master Plan that was done and gave us some good strategies and principles to go by. And then on top of that is the 2019 Cultural Landscape Report, which in that is also the Lady Bird Johnson Wildflower Center Ecological Site Report. And then the park itself is the State Antiquities Landmark. And so there are some guides and things we have to do based on that. Also on the National Registry of Historic Places. And then so it's subject to Section 106 review with federal and the floodplain, the water channel. Okay, next. So Breckenridge Park Master Plan had 3 main strategies that were approved by the public. Restore natural park features and improve water quality. Preserve, restore, and articulate the culture and historical features. And then increase park visibility and pedestrian access to and within the park. All of those approved by the public. And then the CLR document, there's 2 slides on this that go through, a deep dive into what the park is and looking at it from different areas. So some of the things I'll just point out, emphasize lid techniques. That will be something that will be in the project for sure. Deliver treatment and management practices to balance and invitability and contemporary human use. Diverse ecosystem characterizes the park's original character. And so we'd like to have that as well. Next slide, please, Ryan. And then with some of the historic and cultural features, can't even say the word right now. So anyhow, the layered of cultural narratives to be told throughout the area of the park circulation. So that includes prehistoric hunters and natives, early Americans, Spanish, Hispanic, Latino, San Antonio Tejanos, German Hill Country immigrants. All those things are had in a place here in this northern part of the park. Talks about Mr. Breckenridge was an avid traveler and studied cultures along river landscapes. And then the park design being influenced by 5 eras of design: the picturesque, the city beautiful, the Work Progress Administration, the WPA, and the Historic Preservation and Eco-Preservation. Those are all important to the park. Next. Oh, the historic design designations, being on the National Register of Historic Places, it talks about the contributing elements within this scope, which is Lambert Beach, the Upper Labor Dam and Acequia, the pump house, and the pump house raceway. And then also the statement of significance calls out areas of recreation developed in the 1915 time period. Moving on. So site context, our project zone is in the orange. So it's 6.5 acres. Obviously you can see the size of the park and what all contains within the park. We wanted to have that context to show the whole park and then this zone. Next slide, please. And then we want to talk about this from the Cultural Landscape Report, the systems and character zone. So there's ways to look at the park and break it down into zones that have certain characters, right? Riparian zones, you have the wilderness area, kind of a natural zone, and then you're going to have active zones. And so that's a way to break down looking at the park as a whole as you're starting to work back to some of the ways to develop and improve and restore. Okay, so now we're going to dive down into our project area. And so this gives you a good idea of the different features within the historic features within the park. The lily pond, the diversion dam up there on the top, shows the acequia that comes down, and then also you have the raceway that goes to the pump house. You have the Lambert Beach area, the bathhouse, and the swimming area down at the bend of the river. Moving on to the next, please. So we're going to go to the scope. And so project summary, we're talking about these main features: the Upper Labor Lily Pond, the Upper Labor Dam, the acequia, the pump house, the raceway, Lambert Beach, and then general site improvements that work in between all those. So there will have to be some drainage, some lid features. There'll have to be some grading work, utilities, and then talking about the interpretation. How are we able to tell the story? So next is going to show where the project's broken down into 2 phases. So the first phase is in the blue, and that's the Lambert Beach area, which mainly consists of restoration stabilization issues regarding the river walls and the underneath portion of the pump house. And then the phase 2 is the top of the pump house moving north, including the waterworks channel, restoration of the acequia and the acequia walls, uncovering the diversion dam, and then restoration and improvements to the lily pond itself. All right, so now we're going to look at some pictures of the area. So these are pictures of what it looks like now. So, you have the lily pond, you have the acequia, you can see some of the areas of where it needs some work and needs some love, and the project could provide that. So we're looking at the raceway. Those columns actually over there on the right are from early 1900s, and that was columns for the donkey bridge. So there was a guy that gave rides on a donkey, and that was one of the bridges. So that those columns got reused. Next. So here's pictures of the pump house. A great example of looking at some of those trees growing out in an area where they shouldn't be. The other side of the pump house as well, looking at Lambert Beach steps. They take a beating with some of the flood events and rain that occurs. And then we're looking at the walls along the river there, just down below the bathhouse. So this picture, you know, we had an opportunity to really kind of expose and look at what's happening with these trees, what's happening with these walls, and get a better assessment and allow a better viewing of what's going on and the serious, you know, conditions of some of these features. So obviously we do have walls that have failed. We have walls that are cracked and we're getting ready to fail. And then we have walls that are just getting pressure. And so opportunities to be able to stabilize those before they get to a worse condition. So let's go through our project considerations. So we're looking at the floodplain ecology. We're looking at restoration, water quality. We're looking at biodiversity. We're looking at how we deal with erosive forces and flood impacts, and how we can help, how these structures can help. We're looking at stability of the structures and the cultural resources, how we can protect them, but also show them and be able to tell that story. So next slide's going to talk about some of the tree challenges. So obviously, you know, trees here in San Antonio, Texas, you know, are so important, and shade, that is definitely a need. In this particular case, we're looking at areas where they're competing with some historic structures and features. And so we're having to look at these and deal with these. So we have trees that have grown through some sidewalks and walls and are pushing things up. We do have impact root zones. They're so close to the wall. The stabilization of them, you know, they're fighting, they're holding on, and they're doing a good job for now. And then we have also volunteer species, things that are just popping up in locations. They weren't planted, they came up. And then of course, overpopulation and you know, habitat constrained with the birds. So the next slide is going to show us some of the conditions of how these trees are interacting with our walls. So up in the top left, you can see where there's a tree trunk further away from the wall. And you can see the roots still going to that wall itself. And then it hits the wall and then it's going to go down, right? So you're not going to get the full extent of the root structure on that side of the wall. And it continues to add some pressure, but in some cases it's okay so far, but you can see the stresses that are starting to happen with those. So then scenario 2, just right of that, you can see a little bit closer where it's pushing, leaning, and starting to push through some of the bottom areas of the wall. Scenario 3, basically right on top of, and you can see the impacts of the wall. And then scenario 4 is where it found an area between a crack between the sidewalk and the wall. And you can see it growing right in between. And so the impacts that it has as well. So next slide is about approval for regulatory agencies. Of course, we have accessibility, safety, we have sustainability, we have structural integrity. That picture on the left is the bottom. That's the looking up from being underneath the pump house. So that's that floor. That's the flooring structure there, and then the historical authenticity, and that's inside the pump house there on the bottom right. Okay, so what we did is we did an interactive workshop with the community. So we had 4 different boards around that talked about these different aspects of the project from the beginning part, showing them what the historical use used to be, what the present use of the park is. Talk about the historic features and why they should be taking care of it, and give them the information. And so we had three professionals at each location. We had our directors there, assistant directors. Mr. McCary was there helping answer questions and talk to people. It was a great interaction, got a lot of information from them, and then they were allowed to post comments on boards. So we did get a lot of feedback and had a really good opportunity to talk with people. And so we're looking forward to some kind of way, hopefully some type of way like we did this for engagement in other meetings, but we're looking at some other opportunities as well. And then we did have opportunity through SA Speak Up for them to be able to give comments and send those to us after the meeting as well. So that's the presentation. And Homer, did you have any comments before we just open up for questions?
Yes, and so one of the things that's important to note, we've got 3 more meetings to go, only 2 are calendared. The next one is April 26th, and then May 24th. Both of those are at the Whitty, 6 p.m., same venue. And we are working with Donna Carter. We brought her on board to help facilitate and moderate these meetings. She did support parks on another high-profile project that was the Berkeley V. and Vincent M. Dawson Park. That's the green space directly adjacent to Hay Street Bridge. And so we're, one of the things that was clear coming out of the first meeting was not having the format in the next meeting be like the first one. And so that's one of the things that we're going to accommodate, of course. Another other piece of feedback that we received was kind of having the agenda already posted and in the room on the screen so everyone could see what the flow of the evening would be like. The way the last one went, it was more of a lead-in. And so I think some people who were there to provide feedback in a traditional sense, kind of think of a public hearing where you have 2 or 3 minutes sign up to speak. Clearly, it was not that type of format. It was a different format, a different way to connect the audience to the information. And so that was something else that we heard, well, had we known we were going to have an opportunity to interact at the storyboards, that would have been good to know up front. And so we took notes. We're going to, clearly pivot and listen. So the format for meeting 2 has not been established yet. We're going to add an additional meeting. And so at least really 4 meetings, not 3. And so clearly, I think as we go along, each meeting is going to inform the other and what comes next. So we're still in the process of, I think, getting all of those comments together. There was people in the room right at about, I counted 35, and then we had about another 40, maybe a little more online. So think about in that format, we had, maybe 75, between 75, 80 people. And so comments were received there in-house as well as online. We're also, through SA Speak Up, having the public register. And so we're able to track some level of information as well that way. And that's going to be critical to know as we move forward throughout the process. All of this, again, we have a living web page on our website. So this will be content that will continue to be uploaded in that form as well. And so that's kind of the highlights of what's to come. We're still in the process of debriefing coming out of the meeting. We know that separate from the presentation Bill highlighted, which really allowed and showed where there's opportunity for public to provide feedback to influence design. That was a question very clearly asked that we have to answer. And there's great examples of how that could be, whether it's use of the pump house, or think of the immediate area outside of the pump house, the apron. I think at one point it was a conceptual rendering that showed an event plaza. And that was something that, again, was only to illustrate what could be, not what's going to be. From a design perspective, for the whole phase 2 piece, we're, I want to say, about maybe 40 to 50% design. And so when we think about projects like this and the appropriate places within the project timeline where there's opportunity for public feedback, that's exactly where we are in the phase 2. But really, all design has stopped. The project team is taking a step back, big old pause while we get through this effort to figure out the information we need to be receiving, incorporate into the plan. But where we're at right now, we're not doing any design. We're focused on the meetings, still having to work, of course, with the state, the Texas Historical Commission, and then at some point eventually getting back to HDRC. And so those are things where the timeline is not set yet. I imagine that this won't be getting back to HDRC until late summer at the earliest. We're already started the spring, and with the meetings ahead, and knowing we're not doing any work, we're pausing, and that'll inform the path forward from that point. But those are my kind of high-level remarks. I know, Carla, you've got your hand up, but we're here to answer any questions and get feedback.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Homer. I'm so glad that you touched base with those things, because those were, and being in attendance at that meeting, they kind of felt like they weren't considered, or things had progressed without them having any input. And so some of the things that you all have already touched on tonight, I know will fix that issue that came up that night. But that was the main thing that I kept hearing over and over from different groups of people, including architects, that were not justifying the cost for different things. But I'm just glad to hear that you all are putting that in the works of planning on at least trying to appease our community with listening to them, because they were very upset that night. So thank you. That's going to help.
Yeah, yes, you're welcome, and thank you for the acknowledgement. We are anxious to learn throughout this process, get information that is maybe something we didn't consider. At the end of the day, one of the things that I really reflect on a lot, and the team has heard me remember this, but I think about the master planning process, and our mantra then was, it's your city, it's your park, and that hasn't changed. And so we're going to really look to see through this process where there is that opportunity to collect feedback. And as we get closer to the other meetings and whatever changes come or additional meetings, we'll make sure to share that with everyone. Of course, we're trying to extend our reach through our council offices, through our advisory boards. But thank you, Carla. We'll be sure to share that information and feedback with the rest of the team that aren't with us this evening. But thank you for that.
Thank you.
Are there any other comments or questions for Bill and Homer? All right. Thank you so much, Bill, for your presentation. I definitely hope to attend one of the upcoming meetings. I know I've missed out on a couple already, so I hope to make one out. And I hope others here on the board plan to as well. We should be very involved and know everything about this project. It's very near and dear to all citizens' hearts, and it's important. Thank you very much. And Homer, I think we'll go ahead and move on to your director's report.
Allison, we have a
Madam
couple.
Chair, before we do, we
Sorry,
do have.
I see Jeanette. I'm so sorry. My apologies. I just saw them now. Go ahead.
No worries. Was somebody before me, or am I good to go?
Go ahead.
Okay. So, I think several of us on this advisory committee were on the 2017 bond committee as well. And so we're very familiar with this project. And so I think my question to staff is, what is the desired outcome of this process, in your opinion? And, because you don't, I'm just going to say that the answer really depends on how you ask the question. And so I'm just curious, what is the ultimate hope that we can look at through this 4-meeting process? Because I've heard lots of mixed, reactions to the meetings in terms of they're appreciated for sure. They should have happened sooner is the other part. I know none of this is new to the staff, and I'm simply sharing it for the rest of the advisory committee to hear. And then the third is that we go through these 4 meetings, what really can happen and is going to happen. And so going back to my original question, it's like, what is the outcome of this process, best case scenario from the staff's perspective?
I think the best case scenario is to receive input that we can directly incorporate into the project. And, one of the things that I think that we should not lose focus of or sight of, I feel that it's been hard to get out of the gate. And one of the things that we heard at HDRC was, you're only bringing us part of the picture. Bill had a slide there where it talked about phase 1, phase 2, phase 1 being the river walls, and then phase 2 kind of being everything else. And when you think of the river walls where they are, and on some level, one lens to put on it is, looking at that as an infrastructure project, and where is there really opportunity to influence that, which it may be to a lesser degree than, say, everything else that would be in phase 2. Let me give an example. I highlighted the pump house. We haven't decided what the use of the pump house is. We haven't decided what let's call it the plaza area, the immediate area outside the pump house is going to look like. We see a picture where, the title slide, if you will, for that shows the pump house where it looked like, they had a white canvas up there and showed movies there, right? So we have not decided how that's going to be used. That's a real opportunity for the public to weigh in. Maybe it's a visitor center. Maybe it's a little bit of a art space where we can capture some of these historic renderings and the various cultural context periods. None of that's been determined. That's a real, I think, opportunity for us to get that input. I know that everybody, and understandably so, a lot of the feedback has been focused on the removal of trees. We're reevaluating that, looking at are there any that maybe could potentially be relocated. And so because we've been stuck in that phase 1 piece, not getting out of the gate, we haven't had the opportunity to talk about these other ways the public can connect to the space. Beyond that, we know that there's going to be some interpretive signage associated with the phase 2 piece. That is the acequia, the raceway, the Lily Pond, Upper Labor. That is a real opportunity as well for us to capture that historical information. And again, making sure that we're taking the opportunity to understand all the various cultural context periods that space is represented. We have not been able to get to a place to talk about that because we were stuck there. So when I reflect and think about HDRC saying, well, we're only getting one piece of it, I understand that. That resonated with me. Being able to take in its totality and understand how it can fit together, I think is critical. So my response to that would be, further going down that road of those other spaces that don't have to do with river walls. And we've heard a lot of comment, and we're going to probably hear more comment of that in the next meeting. And that's good. That's okay. But at some point, we need to be able to get into the other scope, if you will, of the project area. And so in the end, we want to be able to deliver a 2017 bond project that is reflective of that input and be able to use it as a model for where we listened. And we were able to get to a place where we can have support. I don't know that it's going to be everyone gets all of what they want. We're still having to work with a state antiquities landmark, a natural feature. The biggest natural feature in the park is the river. It is. It's also an urban park. And having to balance that in putting it in a way that I think hopefully we can agree on what those concepts are and the difficult nature of balancing all of that. So we're still working at it. I think we will be in a different place as we move forward, and certainly by the last meeting, but those are my initial remarks. I'd be happy to provide any clarification, or if anyone else on the team or Bill or anybody wants to provide your perspectives on Jeanette's question. Does that give you, Jeanette, kind of an idea of where my head's at?
Yeah, but see, what the staff doesn't know is that if they don't have any questions, I'm going to have another one. So here we go. So thank you so much for explaining that. And I think then part of the reason why I'm asking it of this advisory board is because, you know, we are the folks that hopefully our neighbors in our community are coming to us and asking us what's happening over there. And so I want to be as fully prepared as possible to that end. What I'm hearing, and this again goes with, you know, just the general malaise towards city government. And I get that, having been a recovering city employee. But it's, you know, it's that, oh, they're going to listen, but they're not going to do anything with our ideas. And I think it's really important. I mean, we're going to have, you all are going to have 4 meetings. That's a lot of resources committed to asking a question. And then, you know, if you're only going to be able to respond to some of it, I think that that's going to obviously disappoint some folks. So going forward, I think it's really important to be transparent about that to them and just say, you know, and I'm sure you are, I'm going to be at the next meeting, but saying, you know, we're gathering this information to see what we can do that will address some of these concerns, instead of folks leaving and saying, well, we just spent time telling them what we want to do or what we think we should do or whatever, and now they're going to go do whatever they want to. So that's one kind of reflection for you all is, you know, to be really transparent about this is a gathering of information and ideas, but nothing has been decided or determined that would change your course of action. Or, you know, are you saying to the public, we want your ideas because we are going to change our course of action depending on what we hear?
I mean, I think it's the latter,
okay.
Right? I mean, I just, you know, shared that we are looking through a different lens and trying to find a balance. One of the things that has not been asked tonight, but I shared, is because we get asked the most, why can't you move the river wall? Or why can't you move the trees? We're looking at both. But, you know, by moving the river wall, what is not known yet, and I think where we've been able to illustrate, is then there are different impacts downstream where additional mitigation is required. And to be clear, by mitigation, it means there's likely a lot more trees that we need to come out. But, you know, we have not been able to get to a place where we can model and show that. And I would say to anybody, look no further than the 2015, I think it was FY16, you know, the whole Breckenridge Park master planning process. There was a similar engagement process that was quite extensive. And when you look at where that draft presentation was at the Garden Center that Irby Hightower provided way back when to where it ended up, that's change.
Yeah.
And so we're working on it, but I would point them to the track record and history of Parks and Recreation in working through that park with the public. And so for those that say, well, how do we know things are going to change? Well, that's one example, but we don't know what it's going to be. And I don't think that it's going to be all of what one person says or wants. That's why we're going to go through it to say, we heard, we kind of ran it through the system and the formula, or, you know, whatever analogy you want to use, and here's how it looks, knowing that we need to find that balance, where clearly, based on, you know, where we're at and stuck in the starting block, if you will, there wasn't any.
Yeah, I appreciate those comments, and would like to ask one other question that's been asked of me, and that is, how much more is this going to cost as opposed to what was budgeted for the 2017 bond and for this project? And my very general comment back was, you know, well, we don't know because we're not sure what's going to happen next. And so I'm curious if you have, you know, a range of budget costs, and you won't have that probably until the second or third meeting to kind of get an idea of what additional funds you'll need over and above the 2017.
Yeah, well, we don't. So one, no, we don't know yet. Yes, it's costing more. What we have said in the context of the 22 bond, it is to go to directly support and the 2017 bond and all that is needed for that. We also have the Brackenridge Park Conservancy that is privately fundraising, and based on their reported fundraising estimates, they've fundraised for the 2017 bond project a little north of $3 million. So, you know, at the end of the day, we know that this is needed work. It is too early to even say what the estimated cost is going to be because design isn't done. So it's going to be some time before we know, once we're done with design, what we think the cost is going to be. And that's just for construction, right? We're not talking about all the soft costs that is permitting, engineering, project management, you know, and these additional meetings that we're doing. So you're correct to say, no, there's not an answer currently. We will get, I think, a better idea once we move forward, but we are looking at 2017 bond funds. We are looking at 22 bond funds. We are looking at the private fundraising of the Conservancy, the $300,000 provided by the Conservation Society, funding that we have for river walls and our scheduled maintenance project, and then we also have the tourist funding strategy. So multitude of different revenue streams, I guess, or dollars feeding it, but that's a question that's too early to answer at this time.
Yeah, great. Thank you so much.
Jeanette, I was going to add just the component of education for the public as well. So, I mean, a lot of this process that we go through, it's easy to understand some of the floodplain concerns, some of the dollar concerns, some of the other impacts that we have in other areas of the park. And so as a project team, you know, we're looking to step back from that and help let the public understand those things. So like Homer said, we are going to look at what happens when the walls move in, right? And what does that impact? What requirements? And so we're going to go through a little charrette with that to give them the opportunity to understand that. And so, you know, you're talking about, okay, you want to save these trees. So then what happens to these other trees downstream that we have to take out, and it's more just to make up for that wall. And so we want to help them understand some of those things. It doesn't mean it can't be done, but then your next question, which led to it, was then if we do that, it's additional dollars, right? So we destroy historic features. There is a repercussion from the Texas Historic Commission. They do require mitigation. And so we can give you an idea of what that is. Then we have the floodplain, and you have to fix your floodplain issues before they leave your property. You can't, you know, put it on somebody else. So it has to be addressed within the park. Well, as we go further south, we go to natural areas of the park where we don't have walls, and that would be the easiest and best place to take those on. But guess what? Then that impacts a lot of trees and a lot of natural area, which is not, you know, a good solution either. So looking at how all these things work, and then I want to go back to thinking about those character zones. So we do have urban areas of the park. We do have areas where there's more infrastructure, and then we have areas where there's not. And we have different components, and this truly is a park that could be for any citizen in San Antonio. We've got so many different things that could be possibilities: history, water, picnic areas, wilderness areas, opportunities just north of downtown to see wildlife. We've got foxes, we've got possums, we got raccoons. Crazy, right? But in there we have it. We've got these, we got a theater, we've got a Japanese tea garden, a zoo, a museum, the museum just south, golf course. I mean, there's so much, but there's places where things should be and shouldn't be. And so looking at those bigger pictures and trying to work those. So some education, some information about the history. A lot of these things are covered up or people don't understand what they are. So giving them more context. But then, like Homer said, we want to listen. We want to get their feedback and work those two things together so they understand, our concerns and costs and issues that go with that. And then they're, weigh those together so that we can all be at the same page.
I'd like to ask, just where's the Conservancy at right now? I mean, how do they feel? Because I know that with the meetings that I had with them, that they were really anxious for this project to proceed.
I don't have reason to believe that their desire for the project to proceed has changed. They fully understand the process that we have to go through and that we are going to go through. They did have a representative there at meeting number 1. We'll see what that presence looks like at the next meeting, but they're still there, and we're going to have to see exactly, back to the Jeanette's question on cost, right? What's this all going to run in the end? And I know that that's something that I think that they're going to want to know as well, because their dollars and what it's going to go towards for their fundraising, but their desire to see the project and move forward is still there.
Hey, so I think it's my turn.
Yeah.
According to Allison, I just wanted to really commend our Parks and Recreation Department for the way that I attended the meeting virtually, and which did have a few challenges virtually, but that gives you another perspective, right? I want to commend our Parks and Recreation team for handling a very difficult situation in the beginning, particularly, and in the end, when people actually started talking with each other, it obviously got much better. But like all things in life, it's getting that messaging across. And then once you have an opportunity to talk with somebody and to make your voice heard and to have interaction, then I believe that people will come to much better understanding of the entire project and where do we go from here. I also feel that the reestablishment of the Brackenridge Park Stakeholder Advisory Group was a great decision. And I believe it will improve communication between all stakeholders in the park, and that will domino to the rest of the public and to all the people that want to be heard and feel like, because we all know somebody who knows somebody who's on my board of directors is inundated with questions about Brackenridge Park. And so this gives us an opportunity to all learn and to move forward. But I do feel like, we all know the park is great. By the way, there's wildlife. There was also a jaguarundi in the tea garden. So, one more piece of wildlife out there, and there's always so much to learn. It's just how do we get that message across where that more people can hear it. So our messaging, I believe, will improve. And I think that one of the things that came out from Homer originally, before the meeting was even over, was when he said so clearly, we need a 4th meeting. And that was before the first one was even done. So I think we're going to make progress quickly, and I'll be glad to get out once it's on the calendar. Then we really want to try to spread it through all of our various resources to make sure that people do know that their message can be heard out there at these meetings. So just my 2 cents. Thanks.
I think we have our last question with Carla, and then we'll get to the director's report.
Mine is not necessarily a question, but kind of a concern of observation. If there would at least be people that would be in attendance at these meetings that can address some of the concerns and questions that come to the floor. I didn't see enough response of trying to help them understand what the process was really like. And I think there was a little bit of a misunderstanding of what the agenda was going to be like that night. So of course there was some upset people with that issue. But I also think that if you don't have people there that can address at least some of the questions, it makes it even more difficult to allow the communication to have a smooth process. But when they felt like no one was there to even address some of the questions that were a little fundamental or basic, I think that was a concern as well. So maybe going forward, we could take more advantage of that, process in place.
Yeah, we will. We do want to make sure we have our subject matter experts there, and we're going to regroup and retool. But thank you, Carla.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. So director's report, couple highlights. So Easter camping is coming up. We know that that's going to begin that Thursday before Easter. Typically, we put out a notice a couple of weeks out. We're always starting to get some questions in. We talked about it this morning. So not sure we're going to get something out this week. At the latest, it would be early next week. Just want everyone to know Easter's back, and so we're looking forward to that. We also recently were notified of a Kaboom playground build in District 2 at Pittman Sullivan Park. CarMax is the local funder, so we will be doing a community build here soon. I'll ask Ryan to get information out to everyone so that you have that knowledge. But we're excited about that and continuing our strong partnership with Kaboom. And then we do have a couple of upcoming ribbon cuttings as well. One ribbon cutting, at West Quill Park. Of course, that's in District 7. As of right now, that is set for April 11th. And then staying in the district, we do have a planned Earth Day event at Woodlawn Lake Park. That is something that the city does produce. It is an official Fiesta event, but of course, Earth Day is a day on the calendar and does not necessarily float around with Fiesta. So we are going to be celebrating it on April 23rd. We'll be getting more information and details out to everyone on that as well. So Connie and her team, Meredith, Tilly, have been working on putting that program together. So we're excited. And the other thing that's not on here, but I want to make mention of, we do have an unfortunate fatality that was in the news a week ago, and it's related to a cyclist there coming off of Salado. And so tonight is our Creekway Advisory Board meeting. I know Brandon does have that on the agenda. We have already been looking at some pedestrian and cyclist safety improvements at that location that we would be happy to bring back to everybody, and not necessarily wait till the next meeting, but we're looking to mobilize and move quickly. It would be something that would really force bicyclists to get off of their bike instead of just kind of going through that intersection. We're also in discussion with TxDOT to see if there's things that we can do to maybe add additional warning signage, decrease speeds. There's a multitude of things. The fatality did generate a lot of interest, and rightfully so. And so I know that's just that one location. We're having a larger discussion about where do we have similar circumstances and conditions where we need to be looking at this beyond the immediate need there. So I just wanted to cover that in case anyone was wondering, and we'll get information out related to that once we have those design plans in place. But it is something that we have funding for and we will move forward with. But I know that was kind of quick, wanted to highlight that so you know it's on our radar. But that concludes my report.
Palmer, can I add something?
Oh, go ahead. Go ahead. Jeanette has her.
I'm sorry. I just wanted to, and we can get you guys some information, but Sarah had mentioned when she talked about summer youth that we are hiring. I just wanted to remind folks, we are still trying to get 24 pools staffed and ready to go this year. We are this year doing an incentive for our lifeguards. They can earn up to $700 in incentive pay. There's certain milestones for them to meet, basically to stay with us through the summer. So we have lifeguards, we have pool supervisors, area supervisors who monitor so many pools each. But we really need to get these pools back and open. We were able to do 8 last year. I think we got a 9th one in kind of at the end, but we got 24. And I know some folks we don't want to go a 3rd year. So we are working feverishly to get them on board. So if you guys know anybody, Ryan can send you flyers. I can get you more information on the incentive program. It's a great summer job. We have, folks who maybe are in the education field and want to do that instead of our summer program, but we have a lot of kids as well. So I just wanted to kind of selfishly throw that pitch out to you guys to try to get myself staffed up on both programs.
Thank you, Nikki. Jeanette, I think you had your hand up. Do you have something to add or
Yeah,
ask?
I just wanted to ask a quick question. Homer, you mentioned a website for the Brackenridge Park process. Are you talking about the public hearing site? Because I'm looking at the city site right now, and I just want to make sure, because I'm going to share it with people. If somebody would just drop it in the chat, so I make sure I have the correct site that you want to drive traffic to.
Yes, I'll have Ryan send it out. It's a banner on our webpage, and I believe it's the first scroll, and that is where we have the dedicated landing page for the Brackenridge Park Bond Project. So I'll have Ryan share that with everyone.
Great, thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
There was also a question in the chat about the accident location.
Yeah, I was just asking, because there was that accident near Rusty Lions. I think it was right down on McCullough and Bassey, the fatality.
I have not seen that one.
Okay.
So that's unfortunate. So no, this one is over by Los Patios, Salado Creek.
Right on the access road right there?
Yeah, kind of, yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I've gone through that.
Yeah. And on either side of that intersection, there's, I think, some opportunities where we can do things. Of course, we need our people and, traveling to also be wary. And so we're going to work to improve things. And I know D10 has expressed an interest as well. So we're working through that too.
Great.
But I'll go and look up this other one because I wasn't aware.
Ryan did post those links in the chat for information on the Brackenridge project and all the meetings. Thank you.
If you use the second link, that also allows us to track comments, because you can leave comments through as they speak up on the project. So if you use the as they speak one, that would be the preferred link, because then that just helps us be able to track those comments as well. But both are accessible and both have the same info.
Thank you, sir.
If there's nothing left, I want to take a point of personal privilege and congratulate Mr. Ryan Evans on his impending nuptials. If anyone has wishes or good advice for married life, send them to Ryan. But congratulations. Best wishes to you.
Thank you so much. 5 days, not that I'm counting, but so thank you, appreciate it. Our next meeting is going to be in May. Typically that does run in with Memorial Day, but luckily there are 5 Mondays in May. So our next meeting is going to be Monday, May 23rd. That's the Monday before Memorial Day, so there is no conflict with that one.
And just real quick, Ryan, I know there's been some discussion about possibly having some more meetings, and so we can share more from our individual districts. And I'm going to work with Ryan on setting some months for us to do that. I can't say that we'll have April lined up, but we will plan to have some additional months added in. so that we can arrange that on the agenda. So I know that Jeanette was interested in that, as well as Chuck, and I am too. So we will work on that to arrange.
Perfect. Yeah, without having that initial conversation with Allison, there's a couple of things that come to mind easily. Having something related in the budget timeframe, because there's usually budgets a couple of months long, so we want to make sure we have that information there. We could also look at doing some sort of like a work session, looking at kind of talking through what's happening in our districts, what projects are coming up, what's happening in the next year, that type of stuff. So I'll work with Allison to kind of look at what does that look like moving forward, and get a couple of dates looking up. So when we have our next meeting, we can propose that for you. And Allison is in DC right now, helping get federal funding. So she's in the FA to DC. She is she's on her way to a dinner meeting as well. So we appreciate her coming from a all day of meetings to a reception to Parks Board, now to a dinner meeting. So we appreciate Allison's time as well.
Good calls. Guys, thank you very much. Staff, you guys are always so wonderful. And thank you to all our members of the Parks Board for being here and participating.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
Thank you.
You.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye-bye.